within the same range. Yeah, doesn't
Just
change.
trying to keep on top of you, Jane.
Do you know what our lowest residuals are in the system?
I would have to look at the logs, but I mean, typically we're between 0.5 and 0.67 at the line. Those are pretty good.
So that's
I think it's
I've just wondered if there's.
No, we didn't have to wait.
So,
Okay, I would start.
what are you going on the previous one?
You're usually moving at about
Oh, really?
0.91.
Can I just check in? I never remember who runs these meetings, because I get the instinct to just get us going. You want me to run it?
Oh, really? You can't.
I just.
Yeah, there was not much to hold up
Okay.
there.
Sometimes that, sometimes they're.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna start the
Take
meeting.
a sec. Maybe so we can go faster.
CAC members.
Just to do one thing, Emma will come back out with a larger, bigger copy of that 2025 to 2029 budget, but we won't get to that until we go to the operations and capital thing. So
Okay.
I think we're just gonna go.
Okay, so I'm just gonna check with folks online.
New Jason.
I'm the new,
This is Richard Nellis. Gainham, is it?
I'm Chris Gainer.
Sorry, we've got radicals in the room here that are
Yeah, yeah.
taking over.
Okay, Chair, take control.
I'm gonna have to get my gavel out, man.
Gravel? You're a gravel?
I've got a
You're a
gavel.
virgin, you haven't been out to see us yet.
No, I haven't, but I've been drinking you a
Yeah,
little.
we'll get-
Brian
we'll
and
educate
second
you.
here.
I'll come out to see you. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward.
Yeah, I'm gonna run the meeting.
Does that come up good?
We're gonna stop talking now until
Yes,
you get
you're-
permission to speak. Okay. Why don't we do a quick round of introductions, because we were just, Chris, can you introduce yourself? We've got Ken and Brian online. They're both on the CAC as far as I recall. Are Andrew and Brent as well, or just Brian and Ken?
I've got Andrew, Brent, Ken, and Brian. So looks like we've got everybody. Andrew and Brent are muted. Maybe you guys want to unmute yourself if you want to chime in.
I just want to make sure I know who's on the CAC in terms of discussion versus public time.
Oh,
Brian and Ken?
Yeah, I'm on the CAC.
Yes, I thought so. And Brian, you are as well, aren't you not?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, and then we've got Richard and Alan, Barney in the room for the CAC. So that's our CAC present, and then for staff, Chris Gainham, do you want to say hi? You're kind of new to this team.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, Chris Gainham, Manager Utility Services, taking over from Jason Thurman earlier this year. Good to meet you, and yes, I will promote your site. I'm very much forward to it.
And we've got Uli and Alex, who I think everybody knows.
I believe so. If not, Uli Wolf, General Manager and Environmental Services.
And Alex Delakovsky, Water Operations Manager.
And Jay.
Jay Colley, Water Operations Supervisor for Water West.
Welcome, Jay. And myself, I'm your director for Area D. And then Emma's walking in as well. So let's look at our agenda. This is way different than my usual meetings. We won't do all the formal Robert's Rules stuff, but it sounds like we've got to keep these guys in line here. So staff reports, do we want to start with 2.1 operations and maintenance update?
Yeah, technically I would do that, but since we've got the supervisor here, we can take over. Oh, yeah.
The Sorbonne water treatment plant has been online since, I guess, early in the year, and it's been operating, I would say, without any issue. Had a couple of communication issues over the year, one of which was I guess a licensing issue that we were unaware of, and that's been resolved. Initially, we did not have remote alarming, which we do now have, and that's working as designed. As far as the treatment plant goes, yeah, nothing really to discuss there as far as issues, because there aren't any. We did try to make some leak repairs inside the reservoir in the fall, which was unsuccessful. So we have plans to use a different product, to try to repair those cold joints in the reservoir in the spring. And it is a considerable amount of leakage there. We were measuring about 0.6 liters a second when the reservoir is about 70% full. So it definitely needs to be addressed. Other than that,
Was that when it was cold, you were measuring the
that was in the fall. In the summer, it was,
less?
it's actually gotten worse, it seems.
Really?
Yeah. So we need to address this.
The product you tried didn't work, or?
No, it wouldn't stay in the cracks, so we just gotta try something different. Yeah. Did I have anything else on that platform?
I'm just gonna check sound. Ken and Brian, can you hear us okay? And if you have questions, you can just speak.
It's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah, I'm getting low network bandwidth and things, messages like that, but it's doable.
Okay, and did you get all the materials, like the materials we're referencing, you have copies of?
Whatever came with the email, yes, I have those.
Okay, great.
Brian, if you drop your video, you sometimes enhances the voice.
Yeah.
Then we wouldn't see you.
That's right.
I'm watching chat as well if communication issues come up. Any questions from Brian or Ken on Jay's operations update?
No,
Hold on one sec, Barney. Go ahead, Brian.
that seems pretty straightforward. Things are working. Leaks have been fixed.
And Ken, did you have a question?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, sorry, go ahead, Brian.
I'm curious as to what product didn't work.
It was I think it's called Manasbond. It's basically like a caulking that a lot of the reservoir construction and service people have recommended. We have used it in other reservoirs with good success, but it just didn't adhere to the concrete on the vertical wall. Yeah.
So that's wet applied.
Wet applied, yeah, it didn't have to be dried, but it did not work.
And I would like to ask one clarifying question.
Yes.
So it was a double whammy when we didn't have any communication with your alarms in the tank, licensing, and something hadn't rebooted when we lost power. Was that the reason?
There was a couple of different times that it was lost. One was that licensing issue, and the other, I think, was a power issue. And I'm not 100% sure after that power issue why everything didn't come back online, and when it did, I'm not certain what changed, because I didn't actually get to the site. I wasn't here, so I'm not sure how to answer that.
And the tank communicates by cell signal?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, it communicates with a cellular link to the treatment plant. Yeah. And that's how we monitor, that's how we get our signal remotely as well as through the cellular.
Okay. You do.
I can ask a couple questions about that. Is that the most reliable form of communication in terms of essential information getting through?
Either way, we're communicating with an internet connection, so maybe it's not the most reliable, but I feel that it is reliable.
I do know with the power outages, because up in the Lardo Valley, we have them so much that I know that Kin is now in the area, and they will have backup power systems to their internet way quicker than anyone else will.
Right.
So if you're with them, then you can also call them directly and be like, hey, we got a water system down, can you get it up?
They are the connection at the pump house, yeah.
And then the other question is there backup power for the system?
It is ready for essentially a generator. There's a transfer switch and everything there, so we basically just need to bring a generator to the site, plug it in, flip a switch and away it goes. Yeah, so it's real easy to do, but there isn't a generator sitting there, no.
Okay. And is that something we've contemplated in the capital plan?
Not currently, no, because they do, we have to size them out, generators are, it really just depends on what we need for to support the lake pumps and then of course the booster pumps, which is a considerable amount of energy right off the hop. So I don't know, without looking at the requirements, our most recent generators that we've supplied to water systems run anywhere between $60,000 and $80,000.
Do you know if they qualify for community works?
That'd be a really question.
Yes, yes, they do. We have done that before. It might be a little bit small, because we have a smaller, two small sets of pumps.
Yeah.
The lake pumps are considerable.
They are.
Aren't they, guys? They've got to be.
They're smaller than, would be smaller than the low at Edgewood as a comparison.
Even those lake pumps, like, we're
Yeah.
talking.
Yeah, not much head.
That's why you have a booster. So
The tip boosts it up to this, more, yeah.
Well, maybe just, sorry, Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly have a look at it. It just would be, then you're looking at the installation of the pad and you're looking at the rental of the propane tank. It would go with propane as opposed to diesel. So there's other auxiliary costs as well.
one of the challenges may be as well that we were pressed for release area with our upgrades. That's why we ended up staying within the building. I mean, there were environmental issues too with the discharge, but so I'm not sure that we can, on what our current lease area, readily install a generator without having to go through that whole process
Right.
of lease renewal that was pretty lengthy the last time, but that's something we'll have to check out.
If it was an exterior pad and just a roof over it, somewhat weatherproof, would you think you'd have to qualify?
I think we were, as I recall, we were pushing the limits on our lease area with the last construction, but don't quote me, I haven't been directly involved in the project, but I know that another building for treatment wasn't in the books because of the tightness of the lease area and some environmental sensitivity issues.
On a related question, do you have a mobile power source that can be shared among different water systems that could be brought in as needed?
We don't. We have considered that a few years back, just a trailer mounted generator. Problem is that very often when you need one, multiple systems need one. If it's that larger power outage in a region for an extended period of time. So we have never followed through on that idea, but it was floated before. We can look at that again. We have meanwhile several water systems last year, carrying into this year. We have 3 water systems that actually got their own backup power supply. They are all a little bit larger than you, or significantly larger, depending. It's an option, we can look at it, but like I said, that this issue would be one of the ones to consider as part of it.
Thank you.
When we have Alex do if Jay's done with operations, we could do capital report and then kind of circle back if this is a priority we want to look at for 2026. Does that work?
We've talked about it before, but when we had talked about it before, it was more like, yeah, if we needed it, we'd get a generator, bring it out to site and run it. So that's what I was thinking, like a trailer, a wagon, or mobile. Does that mean we should maybe take that step and find out what size you need?
We have the size that we need in our emergency plan at the site. So we know exactly how big a generator we would need in the event. And basically just.
So it's presumed to be a mobile unit?
Yep.
going back when making the installation, talking to the electrician that was out there doing it. There's two ways of looking at that. If you didn't hook up absolutely everything, you could use a smaller generator that could just plug in and fire up a little gas, whatever.
As a minimum, you always need your 2 power sets of pumps, so that's your big consumer.
Yeah, and in fact, all the combined load in the building is not connected to what would be powered by the generator through the transfer switch. He's already done some of that. Like
He's done some of that already.
He's removed some of the heating load from that,
Yeah.
so it's, yeah.
So do we know what size of generator you would need for that?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it is reported.
But considerably lower than if we had to run the whole system.
Yep.
Okay, good.
So I think it's good to note that I think there's interest in knowing more about how we might have this available. So perhaps for the 2026 capital, including consideration of what would qualify under community works, would be a good capital.
It will qualify, we have done that.
Okay, great. Well, then just assume if you, as you investigate it, that is one way of enabling it. And I also support the notion if there's a way to have one that's mobile with, I mean, kind of pros and cons on what's better, because if you have a mobile one that's needed across the region, you're likely dealing with a pretty massive emergency. And that mobile ability is not going to serve everybody who needs it. So at your discretion, what's the best path would be what I'd ask to come back to the CIC if that works for you guys.
Yeah, I made that as a note.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
So for you, Alex.
So in terms of updates for the capital that was completed this past year, I think Jay's already covered it. It was the main, commissioning of the water treatment plant. Then, of course, that resulted in rescinding the long-standing boil water notice. We still need to report out to Interior Health. We still need to collect samples on both the raw and treated side. Fortunately, Interior Health at this moment are still willing to cover the cost for the bacteriological sampling, so we'll continue providing that information to them. This is as support for your filtration exemption application, but everything is working as designed in terms of the water treatment plant. Later on, I'll discuss what we have planned for 2025 when we get to the budgets. So I won't inundate you right now. Jay kind of covered everything with the O&M, and it is, includes the capital updates as well.
Okay, so then like hydrants and all that's in the 2025 budget conversation?
Yes, and we'll be addressing that shortly here, yeah.
Alice, do you know roughly when you can anticipate the exemption for the filter?
We are under the exemption right now for filtration, and it is just an ongoing, basically you're just supporting that application or that filtration exemption. It's ongoing. You just need to collect the data there's certain criteria that you need to meet in terms of turbidity and total coliforms per 100 milliliters on the raw water side. And that's just ongoing. If that ever changes, like all of a sudden we get, 2 to 3 months of continuous coliform hits, something shifts in the water quality at that depth where the lake pump is placed, then there is a chance that Interior Health says, now you have to install filters. You're not meeting the criteria for filtration exemption.
So they never give a complete pass. They'd always want to test the result.
That's right, yeah. It's an ongoing procedure to make sure that you still qualify for that exemption. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Is there any other questions? For O&M or capital? I mean, we'll talk about 2025, but.
All right, let's talk budget.
Share my screen here. So what I'm sharing now is the board approved financial plan. So that is the 2024 to 2028 financial plan. So it's what's already been approved. Typical to kind of review this. He gives a rolled up version of what we're going to show you next, which is the 2025 on the 2029 plan.
Go ahead.
Sure. Got any questions about what's already been approved? We can certainly discuss that. Otherwise, we can get the meat and potatoes with the what we've got draft for you.
So just for clarity, this is what we approved last year.
Yes.
I don't see any questions.
No. Yeah. And now we have moved on to the draft 2025 to 2029 financial plan. What we're looking at is a 4% increase in rates, 2025 through to 2029. And an increase in parcel taxes on my end is a 6.76% increase roughly in parcel taxes for 2025, followed by a 6.54% increase 2026, and a 7% increase 2027, and then marginal increases 2020, no increase in 2029, and 2% in 2028.
Chris, can I just verify the percentage, right below the percentage is the actual increase, so it's about a $20 increase for 2025 on the parcel tax, is that correct?
No, we're going from 17 yeah, sorry, it's a 7% increase.
But right below the 7% is a number figure, so.
It's gone from $426, it will go up to 456 is what we're proposing.
Yeah, so sorry, $30 increase.
Yes.
Okay. Just ask questions as you guys would like.
No questions on that. And move down to if there's any questions on the revenue side of things. Alex has said that she'd speak to the capital 2025 or the grant contributions identified here.
Can I ask about the community works at 50 and transfer from reserves at 77? Is that part of the capital? The community works grant, is that something that just wasn't expended in 2024?
So that's what we had discussed potentially about the hydrants and then potentially being eligible for the community works funding.
Great.
Yeah, and so that's preemptive, I guess, on the full, like, yes, go ahead, green light on community works for hydrants. So I just put that there as a placeholder.
Okay. And the transfer from reserves, is that?
It's actually the past year's project. We just didn't do the draw on reserves. That's why you see a $68,000 deficit carried over. So this offsets the deficit.
That's the water line relocation cost.
I don't know if that's for Linda or the treatment plant and land relocation. I don't know.
There was.
So,
yeah. Sorry, are you? So I was thinking you were talking about the 50,000 community works for 2025.
Yes, and then right below that, I was just asking about the transfer from reserves.
Got you. Yes, yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Which is covering the deficit, which is from just not transferring those reserves over for already approved projects.
Yes.
Okay.
You did mention hydrants. What was your reference to the hydrants?
We'll get to that down in the next section. If everyone's okay with us moving forward, I'll cover the operating expenses then.
Yeah.
So salaries for 2025 have been increased by 1%. The remaining, so from travel onward down in that section of operating expenses has been increased by 2.7% to meet CPI. The one line item, pardon me, one moment. Hard to read across the lines here. The two items that I wanted to speak to were the repairs and maintenance, the reservoir mixer that needs to be replaced. So there was one in the reservoir that was not NSF certified, which is not permissible by Interior Health to be in contact with potable water. So we are replacing that reservoir mixer. 10,000 is a conservative estimate. It likely won't be that much. Jake, you want to speak to that at all?
What is the reservoir mixer?
It's essentially just a pump to circulate, is all it is, but it is, you know.
That's something new. We've never had that before.
No, it's different, it's different than
We had bubbles.
Yeah, we had bubbles. We didn't have.
yeah. Yeah, so this is it's a certified mixer that you can put, using potable water systems. There's power at the reservoir, so basically just a matter of moving some oxygen and connecting it, but they're pricey.
And it's important to keep mixing the water.
Just for freezing.
Yeah, for freezing and layering. So actually, that's somehow you can get
So our
certification.
$30 aquarium bubbler isn't any good anymore.
No,
Unfortunately, Interior Health doesn't see it that way.
yeah, it's gotta be like a.
We could put the whole thing inside the reservoir and not have any outside air. Huh?
I guys could rotate blowing bubbles in the reservoir.
But there isn't a mixer there.
Currently,
There's no
So
mixer.
you're anticipating you're gonna have to have one,
So
and you know that it's $10,000.
for 10,000, I could sit on the top there with my paddle when I did.
New in circles. So my assumption then is that's part of the additional 10,000 to the deficit.
That is
From reserves.
being paid through reserves.
Reserves, yeah,
That's
okay.
correct, yes. And again, it likely won't be 10,000, but we've just allocated that amount, in the event. The other, item under operating expenses I wanted to, speak to is the communications, which has increased, and that is because of the new water treatment facility. That, the licensing for the PLC,
sure, the communication hardware.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's that portion, so that's increased, to about 1,500.
So that enables the remote communication. Brian, Ken, I'll just assume you'll pipe up if you got a question.
I guess the only question I would have for Alex, and this is the bean counter in me, why wouldn't the new mixer be a capital expenditure, not a repairs and maintenance one? Or does that even matter at the end of the day?
There's a dollar value associated to what there's a minimum $10,000 requirement for that to be capitalized, so that's why I priced it under operating expenses, but it's still funded the same way through reserves.
Okay.
So our finance department has an artificial threshold for capital expenses, and that's under discussion and likely will change in the future. But right now, it's artificially $10,000 to consider capital assets that are then depreciated as any other capital assets. And so, not knowing what the end cost is, if it's then $9,000 or $6,000 or $1,000, it's below the $10,000 threshold. To be on the safe side, Alex has put it under the operation side of things, still being financed reserves.
Okay, thanks.
And that's that management threshold, so we're not assessing things that are too little to assess.
It's going to change and evolve. So first of all, we haven't set the thresholds for asset management, and they may differ depending on the nature of the asset. Some make sense at a lower threshold, others don't. This one was set artificially, a discussion between the operations side and finance for years, but it's under review. But we clearly have assets where it doesn't make sense not to consider them under the capital budget, even if it's below the 10,000. Like I said, more to come on that topic.
Is there any other questions for operating expenses?
Can you hear me? It's Brent Hefner.
Yep.
So everyone can hear me?
Yes.
I had a question on the expenses. I'd like to go to the lines for salaries and benefits, and it looks to be about $14,000 a year is what we're putting in the budget. And I would just like to know. I'm kind of curious what the cost experience was, say 4 or 5 years ago, for salaries and benefits before all of the new equipment was installed. Do we have?
You can see the from 2021 to 2023 on the more left-hand side of that. You can see the amounts.
Yeah, so it's varied from, 2021, we had a low of $3,174 with a bump up, I don't know.
I think that's the year we got the project.
Is that the year that we got the project? Yeah, and then it settled down again, but with an average of 56.72.
So really, I mean, the salaries and benefits have increased appreciably since we've had the new equipment. It takes more operating time, does it?
As well as there's an expectation on interior health as well. So we have to satisfy that as well. So there's additional staff time there.
Will the project management component kind of come out of this once the project's completed?
No, that would be below line under transfer to other services, 59,500. Project management in that row, fairly far on the bottom. That is the cost associated with the capital projects that the project managers spend on the project.
But once the build is complete?
Sorry?
Once the build is complete, well, we're now going through the water testing phase, but...
There's no project manager's time associated with the pilot phase, right?
Sorry, I'm not understanding. So the project management time was finished once the water treatment facility was commissioned.
Okay, that's what I was asking, was
Yeah.
that time has been removed from it.
It is already, it's stated there under 500, 2100, that kind of light blue area that's just other service.
Yeah.
I'm still on.
That's the remaining amount for P1 and Q2 for project management until the plant was fully commissioned.
Okay.
And so, yeah. So the rest is now just under staff time.
One more question before we leave the expenses. Brent Hefner here again. If I can draw your attention to the line entitled insurance. What sort of insurance policy have we got there? What are those premiums for?
There's typically two. One is our assets, that's the main one, the insurance. So from your reservoir to your treatment plant, and then I believe there's a smaller component of liability insurance in.
Sorry, can you elaborate on that? I mean, is it insurance that's charged to the water system by the RDCK, or is it an actual insurance company policy?
It's an actual insurance company. The insurance, most of, if not all of our insurance is applied to MIA, Municipal Insurance Association, I believe. And they provide most of our insurance coverage. We pay all our insurance external. There's no RDCK retained insurance on this thing. Right,
yeah. And that's what I was thinking, because the MIA, I've had some dealings with them over the past year, and you know what that was all about, correct?
Do you want to really discuss that? I thought we had clauses not to.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I said, do you really want to discuss this? I thought we had clauses not to.
Oh, I can discuss anything. No, I'm curious what the expense was for, what the insurance expense was related to.
So This insurance is related to the asset and the system. It's not related to land use issues that would have come up in the same area. That would have been a general insurance through the RDCK that the MIA is our provider.
In fact, it wasn't insurance at all. It was paid
That's right, sorry.
out of A103. That cost you would see within the environmental services fee. So it is covered within there. We have fairly high thresholds that we need to exceed otherwise before we actually can submit an insurance claim that we did not exceed. And therefore, this is all fully paid out of A103, the overhead service for utilities.
That all rural areas pay into.
Is the insurance cost for our water system based on the scale of our system or the percentage or?
Yes, the assets, there's dollar values. A part of the asset management planning is that we more and more determine the actual replacement value of our assets. So that determines the value that's insurable. We do look as well at factors like that. I can't remember, just depending on the type of insurance, we might have a $25,000 threshold that we need to exceed before we even can make a claim. So that's our own before the insurance kicks in. We look as well at assets like your distribution system, for example. There isn't really something to insure. So we take that asset out and don't insure it. There's no point paying a few $1,000s because that's what it would be, because that's most of your assets actually is underground and for most water systems. So we do not insure our pipes in the ground, but it's the above ground reservoirs, treatment plants, that type of nature that we insure through our property insurance.
Yeah, Brent Hefner here again.
So Brent, generally we do public time at the end of the meeting, and this is for the CAC members. You want one more question and then we'll keep moving along.
I'm just, while we're on this category, that's all I was, interested in at this point. Insurance. And I just think that the CAC, the RDCK should be transparent with the CAC and make sure that everyone understands what we're paying for, what the water system, what the residents are paying for. And
that's the whole purpose of this meeting and what we're doing at this time.
Right. And I'd just like to say that, there was expenses put through with the MIA BC related to legal actions. Now, as everyone knows, I've taken legal actions against the RDCK in recent years.
I think the CAC is pretty well aware of that situation.
And I think that the CAC, the residents through the CAC should be aware of how the RDCK is managing from the senior management, how they're managing their business.
Thank you. And we did not use taxation for those expenses nor insurance. We can keep going.
It's quite easy. It's quite easy to quickly get over the quickly get over the truth.
Also, the cost. I don't think you should be sitting here and educating people on that cost.
And why not?
No, we can, I can't talk about it because we have a confidentiality clause in our agreement. So this is not the place.
Okay, perfect. I'm glad you mentioned that because this is exactly what I'm talking about. It is a great way for the RDCK to escape, any responsibility of their senior management.
Right, you dealt with this.
You sent me a letter waiving that confidentiality clause, and then we can talk about it. That didn't come from us, that came from your lawyer.
And this is not on the agenda. This is not something we're discussing. If you want to share with the neighbors your version of what occurred, by all means, speak as you wish. This is not this meeting right now. If the CAC has questions for us, we'll take questions from them. Thank you, Brent.
Okay, well, Amy, sometimes people get defensive when the truth comes out.
I'm getting defensive because you are taking over this meeting for issues that are not on this agenda, and the CAC is very well aware of everything that occurred. They are here to ask us questions, and you're taking up their time. So please, CAC members, do you have questions for us on this issue that is not on our agenda, but you are welcome to ask us about at any time, including right now. Barney's good. Richard's good. Alan?
Well, actually, we've been told it can't be discussed.
Because they asked for an NDA. So thanks for putting us in an awkward condition there, Brent. Ken, do you have questions?
But Brent,
No, I'm good, thanks.
I'm happy if you send us a waiving of your confidentiality clause. I'm happy, very happy to discuss that publicly.
And what I was able to provide to the CAC was I was not going to use taxation to pay for the expenses involved in your claims. And we did not. And that's what I let them know. All right, whoever was on the budget, if you could keep going, Chris.
Sure,
They,
happy to.
I think we're at capital.
Yeah, we are at capital.
Yes. Yeah, so this is the part where we get to discuss projects for 2025 and onward. We do have 50,000 allocated for some fire hydrants. Again, if we're allocating about 15,000 per, we're looking at 3 hydrants. And Jay can speak to where he feels the best locations might be. And then Amy, we can speak to, if you'd like to elaborate on the first one.
Sure.
Yeah. So Jay, if you want to where that
Yeah.
those hydrants might be?
Yeah, we had a walk through this system last year. I believe you were around with most of the walk out that day. I think there was a couple of fire chiefs, the regional districts, including representative from Castle and a representative from Balfour were there. We had a look through the site with Ron, and thoughts were in order of, I guess, operational benefit would be one at the highway or close to the highway at the upper Village Road, one on the Village Road, just at the bottom of the hill, just where the intersection of, I guess, is that
Grass Road.
yeah, that one, and then basically somewhere along the road, roughly halfway between the end and the road down to the lake, wherever we can make one fit, just how close it is to the rock. And those are the 3 locations that we could look at.
So you did mention the upper road?
Basically right at the highway, right at the intersection, yeah. And that's for the fire department, that's the easiest one to access with a tanker for shoveling.
And that's basically what we're looking at is shuttle as opposed to kind of fire hose.
Combination of, the one at the upper road would be the most convenient location for shuttling.
Yeah.
The 2 locations on the main Village Road could use either for shuttling or for an extended hose lift. Yeah.
Ken or Brian, do you have questions on that before I talk about the funding for these?
No, I'm good.
I'm on the fire, smart committees.
Hold on, guys, 1 second. When we speak, we can't hear them. Brian and then Ken. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I think the hydrant thing seems like a really good idea from the bit that I've heard from Ken. So I'm pleased to see that this is going ahead.
Okay. Ken?
Yeah, I'm glad to see it's going ahead too. I know Ron Parasato will be just ecstatic about it.
Yeah.
he's been trying to lobby for that for about the last 10 years.
Takes us some time. So then funding, do you want me to go ahead, Jay? Yeah, okay. So mostly I wanted to make sure that we had worked through the fire chiefs and, what Ron had presented from the Fire Smart Committee and the CAC in terms of that location. So that's all been dealt with. That was kind of my main focus, was work with the fire system that would be using it. And then the funding, again, Community Works is my fund for assets, and Woodbury being the only water system in Area D currently gets the bulk of my Community Works. So make sure no one else comes on as a water system and you'll continue to get Area D grants. But wherever I can, this being obviously super important for our situation and where we are. So the 50,000 is earmarked. I think my understanding would be that once the project is going about, you'll pull what you need. Staff have to actually apply for this. We don't just transfer it because it's federal funding. So 50,000 is fine to earmark. I've noted it so that my Community Works allocation list, which Uli gets every couple of years, because it takes a couple of years to use it.
There's actually one more step. I think it will not be a problem, but I still have to verify the eligibility and the Community Works, but I'm fairly certain it is.
Oh, for the hydrants. So that's a good flag, because if it's not eligible, the only other option for this, because this is pretty much equivalent to what we pull in taxation, would be reserves, because we're not going to tax for this. So if it's not eligible for Community Works, I would want to come back to the CAC on accessing the reserves to be able to do this project. But if you have pre-thoughts on that, go ahead. Your reserves currently are 185, 501, is that correct? Or that's after 2025, they're currently 186?
No, should be 185 starting in 2025.
Okay. So maybe we'll just explore that for a minute. If it doesn't qualify for the grant, how does the CAC feel about using your reserves?
Can I just ask first?
Yeah.
We did discuss whether it was eligible, and I thought there was not, that we weren't likely eligible. Is it like more been looked into there, or is it?
I don't know when that discussion was, but about half a year ago, we got the new parameters, a bit more discussion with UBCM, what's eligible. So they expanded specifically under the fire protection category, the eligibility criteria. It wouldn't have been 5 years ago, it would have not been eligible, but I believe it is now. I just haven't found the time to verify that it is.
Okay, because that's what I remember at that point, it was not likely eligible, and that we would have to tax or take from reserves.
We'll verify that and get back to you.
Good.
So what I'm looking to entertain is a quick, worst case scenario hypothetical is if it's not covered by the grant, we can come back to the CAC and we can be online for it if we needed to get a quick answer if we needed it. But how do you feel about using reserves if the grant is not, if it's not eligible?
So I think it's a good idea, considering the way the environment is moving. We have to be very cognizant of how much snow do we have here right now. And that's something you have to consider when it comes to the community and how you're gonna protect the community.
If we took it from the reserves, then it would be recovered over, say, 5 or 7 years?
If you continue reserve contributions, it will be.
Yeah, I mean, even with our current reserve contributions, we're not even at our 25-year goal here, so we're still.
That's a good consideration, is what's our actual goal on, because with our asset management plan, it tells us how much we should be putting aside. And that's generally for replacement, not for new assets.
Right.
So that's part of your consideration when you're thinking of your reserve is, so we're dipping in this far, how far back does that put us in our general ideal for the 25 years?
So we'd have to increase.
The current contributions are, according to this plan, between 15,300 in 2025 and 21,700 in 2029. The asset management plan identified the number for the 25-year horizon is $34,000. So you're currently under contributing to get to a sustainable level, and $50,000, if that's what it is, expense will set you back by about 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
Those are the years.
One thing that we have, the CAC is aware of is, we did have a major fire in the village. And,
You did?
what?
I did not know that.
Oh, didn't you know?
No.
We had a fire, like a major fire down by Barney's place.
Okay.
And luckily, we had our little fire wagon that we maintained and had that all just laid out by the time Alpha and Cathal showed up. And they put their little waiting pool out, we filled it with our horses, and we were able to control the fire. But it was just through our, how quickly our people moved in the village and how quickly the fire department, we could have had a major fire that was under control. And it all depends on how dry summer was. It was pretty dry, but it wasn't as dry as we could be expecting. So I think it's, I think it's imperative that we look at fire response and what we have to do in the future to control any situations that might occur in the village. The fire smart themselves is looking at some situations. We've actually done a study on low flow sprinklers, considering if the individuals buy one, we'll supply them with one. Will be 2 low flow sprinklers for your house, for roofing house. So we're already looking into that. So adding hydrants, so this is all part of fire mitigation. Fire
CBT
smart.
will fund those.
What's that?
CBT is pretty, if your fire smart committee is doing that work, they're pretty into asset acquisition and make sure they know that you're not in a full fire service.
Yeah, no, we know that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I think for now, like the hydrants are a go. We're just gonna figure out, ideally it's the grant. And if it's not, I just wanted a bit of a like pre-conversation around what that means. I would still wanna come back to you. If the grant's a no, I would seek to email to you guys to say, hey, you still wanna do this, right? So it's your reserves, just so that we've had that, a bit of a conversation about it.
Yeah, I guess my comment, is if we don't get the grant, and I don't know how quickly we could react, but it's a lot of money, and I think we'd, I'm a big supporter of the fire hydrant idea, but I think we need to poll the village or take some sort of a pulse check from the residents, because if we're going to take 50,000 out of the reserve, we got to make that up, which means their parcel taxes and whatnot are going to go up. And, I think we have to be clear as to why and get everybody to either nod their head or, I don't know, 50,000 seems like a pretty big hurdle to just have the CAC determine that we should take it out of the reserve and tax people later.
Well, definitely, Ken, just to clarify, we're not doing that at this time, but
No, I agree. Yeah, that's just what I'm thinking now that, I don't think I wouldn't feel good about the CAC just making the call to take it out of the reserve without consulting the residents first.
So I think what we'll do is when Uli can confirm does this qualify, we can determine if we need to have broader conversations in the community or not about your reserves.
There are other options too. I mean, hydrants are, of course, the gold standard, but, we could install standpipes with, the ability for a host to affix to it, like the attachment there. So a 2-inch standpipe does deliver pipe and water as well. So if they're, obviously the hydrant would be preferable.
Okay.
But there are other options if it's not.
Are you aware that we already have standpipes?
Yes.
And they are fitted for 2, so they will take standard hose, fire hose.
Do you have sufficient standards, or is there infill required to get the coverage?
No, there's sufficient. Is there 7?
I can't remember.
It used to be 5, I think we're now 4.
I think we go with status quo. We're putting hydrants in and we'll get the grant.
Yeah.
As soon as Uli can confirm that, we'll come back to you if it's any different.
Yes. I would agree with the point that Ken made. If it, again, yes, if it goes to reserves, we should consult with those. We have to have their input.
Jay, can I ask you what the maximum production capacity is that we have in the pipe?
I think 3 liters a stack can still satisfy treatment, but we can actually produce more water than that.
So bypassing the plant, you can do it?
Not necessarily even bypassing, but we can have push more water through. We would likely have to bypass the.
Yeah, because that should be a consideration if you pursue these low sprinkler options, right? What's the consumption, how long is the duration of doing that, and how much can you actually sustain a level in the reservoir, or do you lose your level in the reservoir doing that?
We've already run a bunch of those figures.
Okay.
Yeah.
It does say your maximum flow to water treatment plant from one lake pump is 2.3 liters per second. That's
But that doesn't double if you done both of them.
No, we did during commissioning, I would have to look back on those, but I think we did run over 3 liters a second through the plant. Okay.
So what's the timeline? Grant comes in, ready to go. What's our capital timeline on this?
Well, it's, we've got project management in terms of doing the procurement part of it. So they're already on top of it, asking questions, and it wouldn't take much, yeah. And it would be just, a matter of putting out the tender for construction. We anticipate late spring.
Okay. And would you need the tender if it's under 75?
Yes. Yeah, for our purchasing policy, we would need to
Yeah.
do some tender process.
Okay, no problem. So Uli, I guess if you could let us know as soon as you can if it qualifies. Okay. So we're still on the budget. I kind of lost track of where we
Yes,
were.
we moved down to the non-operating expenses.
Oh, I just wanted to add one thing. So my understanding is that, Amy, you want me to look at, just like the costing of the generator? Why?
I think it's, so back to the generator conversation. Would the CAC agree that we can ask staff to look at what this would cost in terms of a potential 2026 expense for a generator? It doesn't mean we're doing it, it's just getting the cost assessment.
Hey, I don't know enough about this generator thing right now to say yes or no. I would need more information.
Yeah, that's what this process would do. We're just directing staff to look into what would a generator be, what would it cost, pros and cons. So is that the kind of information you'd be looking for, Brian?
Yeah, like what's the generator do? Is like it keeps the pumps running if the power goes off, or is it just for the communications, or?
It predominantly makes sure you still have water in a power outage. That would
Okay,
be
which has been a problem before, even though we've had 24-hour plus power outages here.
I think that is wise because if you lose power out there, all your fire protection things may not be worth very much because your reservoir is limited. So having continued supply may actually be more important than your hydrants or any other measures you take to protect your properties. So I think it is worthwhile to see both the rental option and the fixed installation option, what the cost would be of that.
And the feasibility too, we talked about the feasibility of that. So I've taken.
Yeah, I did the same.
Yeah, so we can.
Well, we took that already as an advisement that we will look in the overall feasibility. We won't do a detailed costing, but we will come back and tell you what problems, if any, exist, and if it is better to go with a rental option versus fixed.
So Brian, did you hear all that okay? They kind of just outlined the things that they'd be reviewing and come back to you with?
Yeah. Unfortunately, he sounds like he's talking from the bottom of a barrel to me, so I mean, made out about half, but I kind of got the gist of it. But yeah, I'd be interested to see what the costs are first.
Yeah, so feasibility on having one that's permanent to a mobile, to the pros and cons, what would be the system that would continue, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's just general staff direction. There's no extra cost in the budget for staff investigating things.
And that's practical. If you know what the rental is, that's, if all else, if you didn't have one, you get a rental. So knowing what that would cost and the size that you need, you say that's in the stats now. Feasibility, yeah, we should consider it. The one potential problem is you're thinking that you wouldn't have permission to increase the building footprint. And you could get an answer to that, an indication?
We will look at what's from the project there, because they have to go through extensive ways to get this project through.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I kind of stepped into this position after all of that occurred, so the correct person to ask would be AJ, our project manager, so I need to follow up with him because he does know the ins and outs of what happened there and the complexity.
I don't think we should even think about a permanent installation. I think just portable power for the longer times, you have to worry about the power outage, right? You roll up with your utility trailer in the back with a portable one generator and you plug it in and you fire it up. You got to run down half a dozen times.
I think the only risk you run with that is that if we have, and it's not a known risk. It's not like you can even quantify it. But if we have power outages on a scale that is, detrimental to safety, you could see a lot of competition on a mobile between 19 water systems or the 17, whoever doesn't already have a generator. So I think that that's what staff would come back with is the pros and cons on mobile versus in-house, not in-house, but like permanent. Ideally, yes, that would be the solution.
You could also have evacuation and traffic, you could have a trailer hooked up to the back of the truck, and just have a traffic jam down the road.
Yeah.
I mean, a rental typically costs you a few grand per rental. We did a few, some of them required wiring in. I think two of them required wiring in. That was a little bit on the higher side and the higher capacity generator too, but I think that was 8 grand in one instance. I think it was several days behind out there. I would think, again, looking probably into.
Yeah, we can't be talking a huge generator to run our little pump on the pumps of water.
Yeah, I would think 2-3 grand or so per event, probably, yeah.
And just buy one and throw it in the basement, you need to plug it in.
In the preparation of presumption, it's the pump and the filter, like filtered water is produced.
Yeah, we would have a size. I mean, the number we have size so that we could run the system. So that's the lake pump, the booster pumps inside the treatment plant, and the units. So that everything and the dosing pumps, so everything's operating, and we're producing bottled water. Yeah.
And you don't have a figure for that. You don't know what size of it.
I do. I just don't know it off the top of my head.
It's part of the asset.
Give us a clue. 10,000 watts?
I'll have to look. I don't know. Yeah. But I do know the size of the generator that is required. Yeah, it's in our copy.
And it is wired for plug-in.
Correct. The plug-in is there. Everything is there. Today we can take a generator there, plug it in, and away we go.
Yeah.
And that's what several of our systems have. So we can one of them pre-wired, like just bring a rental in and plug in, and within minutes your deliveries.
Can I ask that you go ahead when you do this research to also determine if this qualifies for community works?
The rental? Generator in general?
Generator in general, it would not qualify for a rental. No, it would not cover that.
Yeah. But, sorry, I didn't quite understand what you meant qualifies for.
The generator.
The generator is certainly will.
Yeah, but if it's a rental, it does not, because that's a short-term expense. That's more of an operational. So just when you come back with the information, it's good to know in advance, hey, this would qualify for community works if we did it this way. Then there's also the option that if you're actually evacuated, but for some reason we need a generator, EMBC will pay for those costs, but you don't need water if you're evacuated.
Over one of my boats.
Yeah, okay. Never mind, rabbit holes.
Non-solutions.
Especially with you guys.
Alright. It'll be a system of perpetuity, please, so dear. We're getting to the end of the budget here. We've got the non-operating expenses, pretty.
Probably my two. So one number in the year changes, that's the environmental services fee. I just did the latest calculation last night, and there was a mistake in the 2024 budget that we now need to make up for. So that number will be $20,805 instead of the $16,135.
Where are we?
Under non-operating expenses, the last line, 59,550,
Right.
transfer to other service, environmental services.
And what is it you're changing?
Why is it changing, did you ask?
No, what's the number you're changing?
Oh, 20,805.
I can provide the updated budget, but yeah, so that's 16,135 under the 2025 budget.
The 16,135 is changing.
The 20,
Roughly.
20,805 is the new number.
Yeah,
The old 16?
135. Yeah.
So, and what does that pay for?
Go ahead.
The 20,000, the environmental services fee pays for the staff, for example, that is in this room, all the support, any kind of associated equipment from phone to vehicles. It pays for preparing agendas for meeting, like the Water Service Committee, any kind of feasibility studies that staff conducts. It is the general support of all water systems. We have today a couple of items that we follow up, so that type of follow-ups is done through the staff that you see. So there's the 3 staff in this room, there's 2 staff, 1.8 full-time equivalent staff that reports to Chris, and we have administrative staff that supports us. That's what that pays for.
And that's all the environmental service fee.
That's called environmental services fee, correct?
Oh.
And then the operators are under salaries.
Yeah,
The operators are on the salaries, and there's one other item, that's the operator admin. In the transfer to other service, so below what we just talked about. The operator admin is when operators are not in the field, when they are doing, let's say, reports for water systems, if they do data review, if they are on vacation or sick leave, if they are on call, any of these types of activities that they are not in the field and writing down the time associated with a specific water system. That's then recovered through this operator admin allocation of these general costs from operator support.
Did you hear all that, Brian?
yeah, I understood all that.
Other questions? We have changed the allocation model so that it's more specific to actuals in terms of tracking what staff are doing. So that environmental fee service used to be a percentage of the budget, correct? And now it's more an allocation model?
It's still using the mix out of operating cost and future asset replacement cost. So the vast majority is based on the operating cost of the system, including the cost of the general admin charge and IT fee, and not the environmental services fee. It includes as well all the transfers that you see below, so fleet and operator admin. And it includes at a much lower percentage, the asset replacement. So a mix, the average between the 25 and 100 year asset replacement costs, but divided by 2.5.
The best quoted, you know.
Do you guys have any, Barney and Alan? Or Richard and Alan?
What?
Do you have questions on this?
Sorry.
Barney,
We're already planning.
you're planning, are you planning hydrants?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, Ken or Brian?
Home?
No. Okay.
No, I'm good, thanks.
I think that generally brings us to the end of our budget. If anybody's got any additional questions, anything they'd like to raise.
So I want to make sure that, what I really look for in these meetings is feedback from the CAC on what this is. I mean, we go through operations and capital, we get it through it there, but I want your feedback on this budget. It's not that different than what we would have seen last year for this year, including the hydrants, so that's not going through requisition or taxation.
Right.
But any feedback on, you got a 4% on your utility and then a 6.7% on your parcel tax, which generally your parcel tax is going to be your reserve, so that's your capital cost, and your utility is the operational cost. So your parcel tax is still lower than what's recommended from the asset management plan, but I think historically we'll get there. We don't want it to be the actual number because that's quite a jump. So
We discussed that last year.
Yeah.
We want to shock you, so
yeah.
nibbling away a little bit of time.
So anything from the CAC, because when I go to approve this, I always want to know that the CAC is like, we're good with it, or we're not good with it, or switch things around.
The point I would just emphasize is we talked about before, reserves are important. We are, I don't remember what the percent was, but we're not collecting as much. We could be collecting more. So definitely if we end up looking at reserve, we'd have to pick that up again.
So this green little box here, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. This is your ideal for reserve on an annual basis.
Your $34,000 is what they recommend annually if we're looking at a 25-year horizon.
And this year it is, why did I just list this? This year it's 15,000, so you're 20,000 under. What's recommended, again, nobody jumps to the top.
Yeah.
We do a staggered thing, so it's not necessary that you increase it, but that's your difference if you want to know your reserve contributions.
So definitely if we ended up, and it sounds not likely that we'd go to reserves, but if we did, we definitely have to bump up our reserves, not fall further.
There is other options that you can discuss. Personally, I'm not as much in favor of it, but you can as well determine that you do debt financing of capital in the future, right? That can be part of the picture.
Mm-hmm.
It works well if you have times like we had from 10 years ago to about 5 years ago, where we had consistent low interest rates. Doesn't work as well when you get spikes like we had a couple of years ago, right? But it can be part of the picture that you do debt financing and not everything cash financing in the future. That is an option that is before you do that you can consider as part of the overall picture. It doesn't have to be 100% cash finance.
And it's generally like if we hadn't gotten that $500,000 for the upgrade, that would have been kind of consideration. That is how do we spread this out over years and borrow for it. For the hydrants, I think if it doesn't qualify for the grant, which we're feeling quite positive it will, if it doesn't, we work on all sorts of levels to try and not access reserves or partial reserves or figure it out in a way that I don't think at that amount you would even want to go to borrowing because it's quite, your interest is going to be too nasty to borrow at that level.
And the thing is that at that point, we take the pulse of the nation. See what the village feels like.
Yeah.
I have one question by me. Alex, is there money left over that hasn't been used up for the new pump station as well? Is all this money drawn out? Is there still some sitting here to go to any costs or further?
the monies for the water treatment plant upgrades, no, all those monies have been used.
And they generally would not let you use it for anything that was not already determined as approved.
In the end, did the project come under budget, over budget?
It was over budget, so I think.
By how much?
I would have to look at it a bit closer. I'm not entirely, this project spanned 3.5, almost 4 years. So there was various inputs on grant funding, various sources of funding, and various draws from reserves. So I would have to have a closer look at it.
If it went over budget, is there any pending invoicing against the water
Everything's
system?
been tidied up, yeah. Since commissioning occurred in May. Yeah, May. That would have, any sort of trickle in electrician or whatever happened.
So if it was-
would have happened by now. Yeah.
If it was over budget, where did those funds come from?
If it was, since it was over budget, it came from reserves.
Okay, thanks. So let me start figuring.
Sorry, just one last question about the big project, the new pump house and whatnot. Is there money left, or have we got any way to do some sort of fix up on the road down there? Because it's kind of tragic right now.
Oh, so, yes, you are correct. So we are looking at potentially in the process of installing the hydrants, potentially maybe piggybacking off of that and doing some road improvements at that time.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, it's on our mind, absolutely. Our project manager, AJ, pointed that out, so we had the idea of lumping those two together.
Okay, thanks.
No problem.
And then, of course, Ken, our Fire Smart Committee is looking at doing a little dressing up of that road as well. If it all sort of merges together.
In terms of like,
Well, we'd like to trade part of the Fire Smart, is we do a certain amount of work in the village. We get credits back from Fire Smart, right? So we get funds.
so bringing up, do you mean like vegetation management or?
Well, just we walk up and down there and there's little limbs hanging here and there. And we just reduce the amount of ground fuels and limb fuel and stuff. We get credit for that. So in conjunction with anything you do, we'd be willing to sort of look at if there was something additional we could do that. Right? You're looking at the road, we're looking at.
The vegetation that comes up on the side of it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're good with this?
Yep.
Thanks, Ken.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, once we hear back from Louis on the community works grant for hydrants, I think that's the only real follow-up we have at this time. Any questions on, we do a mail out, what, in the spring with all this information? Or kind of like the general utility bill type info, is there anything in there?
Yeah, the annual billing insert generally includes all the information that we discussed in terms of what was completed past year and what we're planning to do for the upcoming year.
Okay, because that'd be a good place to make sure we know the hydrant work and that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. Brian, Ken, any other questions just from a CAC perspective at this time?
No, I'm good. I tried to make it there in person today, but they're doing blasting on the highway, and I was stuck for 20 minutes, so I wasn't going to make it in person. So apologies for not being there in person, but this worked sort of well.
You could have come late. There's no permanent consequence.
I didn't know
had no idea. Yeah, I had no idea how long I was going to be sitting there for longer, so I decided just to come home and try this.
And it would have been Brian's first meeting.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you could make it this way. Sorry the sound wasn't so great.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. I think it's a good idea to have Jay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Next time we'll bring.
Yeah, next time bring them
Next time
up.
we'll bring sticks.
Yeah. read the fine print.
That's the only reason they want you to. They want to do it if I'm bringing them up.
I want an unlocked door.
Yeah.
That was-
Unlocked door, Chris, that's yours? You unlock the door?
Yeah, I'll give that one day.
Okay, we'll sign off. Everyone good online?
All good. Yeah, thanks very much, you guys.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks,
Thank
Brian.
you.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thanks, Jay, Alex, Julie, Chris, and Amy.
Oh, I didn't see there was another public person on there that may have questions. We forgot the public time on this agenda. But do we, like, CACs, I get a little confused with.
Yeah, I don't think we actually formally have to provide public.
It's gonna be open to the public. I don't know.
Please get us offline.